Live from Moscow. Now, hundreds of thousands of people from across the UK are gathering in London to voice their anger over the government's proposed massive slashes to public spending. The protest against the £80 billion austerity cuts is expected to become Britain's largest in years. RT's Laura Emmett can now join us live and bring us up to date on this. And Laura, I can see you've separated yourself from the thousands of people who are marching through central London and Hyde Park, where you are right now. But we've seen a massive police presence in central London. Here we are again looking at live pictures right now. There have been fears the protests may turn violent at some point. Any sign of that kind of unrest?
Well, I'm here in Hyde Park, where the vast majority of this protest is taking place, and it is a peaceful protest. But as you say, elsewhere in London, the story is very different. This has really turned into a city-wide protest with disruption to travel and to roads all over the city centre. We hear that up to 500,000 people are participating in this march, and in little pockets all over the city, things are starting to turn violent. We're hearing reports that there are around 4,000 people on Oxford Street, which is London's main shopping street, and that the police are trying to employ the controversial tactic of kettling them, so keeping them in a confined space so they can't do any damage. The police are also dressed in riot gear, but nevertheless people have been smashing windows. They've smashed the windows at the Ritz Hotel and also in a variety of shops along Oxford Street, and we hear that 14 people have been injured during that. Protesters are throwing paint bombs, they're throwing flares at police, and they're also using dustbins as projectiles. And we've also heard just as seriously that protesters have been throwing ammonia at police, which could potentially blind them. There's also, as I say, this huge peaceful demonstration behind me, and this is a demonstration that has been planned in the planning stages for months, since December. And there are people from all walks of life who have turned out to demonstrate against these swingeing cuts that the government wants to introduce over a very short period of time, over just 4 years. And of course, since this demonstration went into the planning stages back at the end of last year, there's a whole new dimension, and that is, of course, that the UK is now leading the charge into this new war in Libya. There are estimates that the UK alone is spending up to $4.5 million a day on this military intervention in Libya. Now, earlier I spoke to John Rees from the Stop the War Coalition, and he told me why he thought it was so important to turn out today to protest against that. Here he is.
If we were to stop the wars in Afghanistan and the attack on Libya, we would have a very, very large proportion of the British government's deficit dealt with at a single blow. We were told that in the very first night of the attack on Libya, over 100 cruise missiles were fired. Those cruise missiles are $100 million worth of resources blown up with every single weapon. Now, that doesn't take a large amount of imagination for people here to calculate how many places at universities that would mean, how many libraries that would mean, how many hospitals that would mean. So I think it's very, very graphically brought home to people here what the financial cost of this is.
So, as I say, a whole new dimension to this protest now that the UK is involved in that military intervention in Libya. But people here are also drawing on the strength of what they've seen in the Middle East. There's a movement called Tahrir to Trafalgar, which is trying to capture people's imagination and bring the power of the protest in Tahrir Square here to London. They are talking about occupying Trafalgar Square over a 24-hour period. So this certainly isn't over yet.
Well, Laura, certainly London is not the only place seeing protests. Over the past 2 days, we've seen anti-austerity protests in Brussels as people there were besieging a EU summit, angry over a potential bailout of Portugal. Once again, here we are seeing live pictures on RT from central London. It would seem that some of the crowds have dispersed to northern areas and possibly to the Hyde Park area, but whatever the case, we'll keep you posted on this here on RT. RT's Laura Emmett there, live from Hyde Park, London. Thank you.